G'day everyone, just here to have a quick look at this meeting from Randwick on Saturday the 11th. I just got the map up early here because I wanted to talk about the wind. It was a bit of a funny day where a lot of the races were run slow first half, and the reason why you would believe so was a pretty strong wind from the south-southwest, so sort of this direction. So the chutes were hit from the side, so not as bad, and then tailwind up straight. It's any time past it, sort of 1400 metres or a mile start was run straight into the wind. 2400s run that whole section into the wind, so you can see why they've sort of run slow and come on quick most races. There were some exceptions to the rule, as we'll see, but just wanted to explain some weird, really slowly run races, and that would be the reason. Backing on the fence looks like it was not a bad place to be, and then sort of getting off in the straight looked important to get off in the straight. Difficult to come from back and wide, well, not easy, so it was possible, but you sort of had to have a bit on them, or it was sort of a disadvantage, I would say, and leading or outside leader 3 wide no cover, especially once we get to sort of 1400 and above, was difficult for sure. So first race of the day was a highway. London Gal wins the race. They've actually gone out pretty solid here, but again, this was run around from the chute, 1000 metre, so not as big a disadvantage, I would imagine. London Gal in here finds the lead. The horse that was heavily backed in a disappointment and will put shadow over the race is the horse in sort of here in the orange. What's it called? Miss Ostend doesn't do much at all. Casino Lord is a victim of its own racing pattern. A really good ride here from Bowman, and a good example of how difficult it is to win from back in the pack over 1000 metres, a real short course specialty distance. They don't go especially slow here compared to other races, but they don't zoom home, but it shows how hard it is to make up ground, and that racing pattern is so important, especially in short races. So London Gal, a good ride, just allowed to sort of roll up under them, gets cover from the wind if anything because of that, so finds a good position. Shelby 66 back from a mile, unbelievably third behind the leader here, and looks the winner at every stage, even looks the winner across the line but doesn't win. So every possible chance for Shelby 66. Casino Lord's Bowman back here, carving through the field, never loses any momentum, gets outside these horses really nicely and extends, doesn't quite run down the 2 leaders. Nice little gap behind them, so I can't knock the first 2, even though they've had every possible chance. I thought the winner was a skippy little wet tracker, but the track turned out to only be sort of a 5. I think it was put up an 8 at the start of the day, but those 3 dominant over the rest, as you can see. I thought there were a couple back in the pack here that I wouldn't mind looking at. So is it Golden Gorge is back in behind here in the white and blue red colours, and this horse here, Midsummer Rain. She was first up from the long break, so she was wide in here, comes to the middle and makes a short run before peaking on a run. I thought she was good, show her first, because she's basically used up here. And then we've got Golden Gorge, who sort of gets tight for room here, but he's a really one-paced horse looking for 1400 metres and looks like he's ready to go. So you see where he doesn't make any ground quickly, but he's certainly not stopping, and he's sort of maintaining that one pace to the line. So I think he's certainly looking for further in a race where he can get closer to the speed and maintain his gallop. So that was sort of what I learned from that race, that London Gal, Shelby 66 pass marks, Casino Lord pretty good, but you know, you're going to face that sort of task every time with its racing pattern. They beat the rest nicely, every chance following 2, and I thought Golden Gorge, Midsummer Rain could certainly improve, but it wasn't a race where you're looking for standouts back in the field, probably hoping that form will line up. It's just a run-of-the-mill race, and Miss Ostend takes a bit of shine off the race as well, failing as favourite sort of inexplicably, according to the steward's report. Race 2 is a really weird one. The winner misses the start 6 lengths. The time's not good overall, which is not a good sign. But what the really slow tempo has probably done here is allowed this horse who misses the start a long way to catch up quite cheaply. So even though he sort of gives him a dig there, takes and catches them up quick, they're going extremely slow here. So he hasn't had to do a lot. It's probably sort of trial speed is what they've gone out here, and that's allowed this horse to tack on. It does run extremely fast. sections to win the race late in the race. It's run a really fast last 800, so can't knock this winner despite a really slow tempo. If anything, you would imagine if it was a faster tempo, it would have won by further. But I just think that really slow section early allowed it to make up for its terrible barrier habits, which it certainly needs to fix. It's not a horse that you could follow with any confidence, I wouldn't imagine, just due to its manners at the start. A very weird race with Travis and Media Starguest extremely well back runners and box seating here, so they both were quite well set up. I thought Media Starguest was extremely well set up. They're bumping out in the turn. They look like they've got energy to give here, and they back up, beating 4.5 and 4.5, take the pick, 4 lengths and 4.5. So they pull out here. Looks like they're going to run into the race and do nothing. This is pecuniary interest coming from back in the field. Magella, which had really average form, nothing exposed apart from race fitness, comes down the middle of the track. Remus is a weird one, sort of made a dash before the bend. We'll go back and look at it quickly, but Remus makes a bit of a run and then held up a touch, and then across the line is sort of doing its best work again. So it was only second up. It's probably a horse that you can forgive back in the pack in a weird run race, but again, a really weird event where two favourites this time have failed, and they've not run fast time, but they have come home quick. So the answer is a bit of a pineapple. The winner certainly was trialling really nicely before that, had no first up form to speak of, but like I said, so 2 trials were both positive. What do you do with it? I'm not sure, because of its racing manners. I did read that they're going to try and put some gear on it or something to help it with its barrier behaviour, but I'm not extremely sure what that is in particular. Race 3. This is a much better quality race. So they've come out slow but come home extremely fast. Nice gaps open up late, and I think this is probably the race, or one of the races on the program, where the form will certainly hold up. Bacchanalia was extremely well set up, but did look like, I thought it was going to get a lot further back than when it did. A really good ride here to box seat just behind the 2 leaders. So Bacchanalia is number 9. Dragonstone outside it. Lady Banff kicks up, and I think that's Tiny in behind. So once it was here, Bacchanalia, very different to being back in the pack and looking like it was going to have to circle the field with Dragonstone up on speed most likely. But once it got its back, different story. Still, I thought Dragonstone would be much harder to get past. Obviously that wind is having a bit of an effect. Again, only 1100 metres, so not as bad, but hitting from the side here, a bit of a windbreak, having cover for Bacchanalia, and it's just had the perfect running transit. Regardless, it was extremely dominant late. Dragonstone puts the leader away quite nicely. Again, it was quite difficult to lead, but outside leader, same position, so good effort to put the leader away. Bacchanalia quickly puts it away. Tiny's probably the one that's had every possible chance in the world. Lady Banff, not too bad. First up, and I see the rider got done for sitting up there. Probably should have run 4th. Talking about Bacchanalia first, it can go on to be competitive in absolutely anything, especially in the next few starts, while the A graders are probably still away, apart from the ones heading to the Magic Millions. I'm not sure if this is a Magic Millions horse, to be honest. Dragonstone, it very similar. It can be competitive in whatever it lines up, especially this grade next time out. I think Lady Banff will be better for the run there and can run well again. Tiny's probably not up to the class of the first 2, I wouldn't imagine. I'd back Lady Banff to beat Tiny next time out. And this horse here, Lady Luxury, certainly worth mentioning. Back in distance from 1250 to 1100. Ran into a slow run race here, and you'll see she just sort of loses touch with them a bit at the top of the straight. And that backing distance sprint out of her legs, but see what she does here late. So that's the last 100. She's spearing through the middle here, and not scared to take a narrow run and rushing over the top of the lake. So her form, if she gets back up in distance and even back to fillies and mares, very, very hard to beat next time around. The horse is Flying Lady Luxury. So back in my dominant, but worth following wherever it goes. Dragonstone similar, going very well and very hard to beat wherever it goes. Lady of Luxury probably just needs to be placed a little bit better than she was on Saturday, and she's back straight into the firing line. Lady Vamp can be placed to advantage as well. Probably 1200 wouldn't hurt her either. Better for that first up run. So that was race 3. Race 4, Christmas Cup. This is a weird one. Heavily backed horse here in Herman Hesse. Set extremely fast tempo, so they've gone out 12.5 lengths above average on a day where I was talking about it was extremely hard to lead and win, and most of the sections are very slow because of that, because of the wind and such. So strange for this horse to be ridden aggressively to lead number 1 and then to set such a extremely fast tempo. As you can see, look at the big gaps all the way around. So here they're running dead into the wind, and this horse is doing a power of work. Nothing really happens behind. The winner's got the softest run you've ever seen, backing on the fence, hasn't spent a penny. Balls around one horse in the straight, and this horse has had to do all the bullocking, left in front, nothing to chase, nothing to give cover, and Mighty Bill picks it up late. Good effort to win in a hard run 2400, never won over 2400 before, never run over 2400 before. So very good effort, a horse that seems to be in and out with their tactics on it, so it's a strange horse to follow, but obviously has ability, and the perfect horse that can sit back and on the fence like that and produce a nice turn of foot that it has after doing no work. Herman Hesse, I think, probably should have won the race. If they run the race a few more times, or it wins probably more than Mighty Bill. It had the perfect setup for the 2400, and unfortunately they just sort of overdid it. Up front, cost it the race, but a length by 6, so 7.85 lengths. Beating the third horse shows how dominant they were over the rest. What do you do with these horses? Probably the first 2 following to a similar race. I think there is a bit of a series from memory this time of year, summer series of staying races, and I'm sure the first 2 across the line will be competitive again in something similar. The rest probably need it easier, and I think I've heard that Hush Rider's going down south over the sticks, but don't quote me on that. Race 5, the English Nursery. Just have to be careful lining these up, as this is a restricted only race. The horses purchased through the English sales, so I'll go through the horses, and it's just difficult lining the form up. From a quality perspective, it looks like they've gone okay. They've gone out slow, which is sort of said is not uncommon for the day, but was out of the chute, so a little bit more wary, and they didn't come home especially quick. So a little bit wary of the form, to be honest, on paper. The performances, we'll just have a look at them, and most of them are lightly raced, and wind and things does crazy things to them. So I'll try and identify, talk about the horses individually, and then we'll try and line them up at the next starts. But it's not an easy race to sort of get a line on from a form perspective. Calgary Stampede's the one out wide here. I think it's a bit of an optical illusion, but Shanghai's out. The Waterhouse horse, Athletica kicks underneath. The winner, El Padrino's out wide, and the horse is a bit stiff. In the middle is Baldino, the favourite in the race. I thought horses that ran quite well here that were out the back with this grey that's sort of 4 and 5 wide, no cover, and the John Sargent horse. So the 7 Seas and Glint of Silver, they were both runs that were quite tough, and they could go on from the race and certainly improve. So I thought they could be a little bit of the forgotten back in the grade, running 6th and 8th. But the winners 3 wide here, these are the 2 that I thought battled on quite well, considering the runs they had in the race. But again, wary because it's a slowish tempo for 1,000 metres, and they didn't exactly dash home. So a little bit wary, but they went okay. Favourites backing here is Unlucky, the horse that pinged the start. Calgary Stampede's outside leader. This horse certainly does a good job. El Padrino and sticks on, and Athletic has every chance on the inside, even though it had a bit of that wind issue. And that's about exciting as it is here. Bit stiff not to get the run there. Bowman could have probably got the run here, then misses the run outside them, gets chopped out. There is a good gap behind. I just like the way these two horses sort of stuck on after having the runs, especially the Grey. I thought he was probably the pick of the two, considering where he was in the run and how he sort of just kept coming despite having no luck at all. All honours with the winner, and hard to say what Baldino would have done, and hard to say how that form is going to line up overall, but hard to knock the first four across the line. Athletica probably had the best run of the four, and probably was a little bit the weakest, so if anything, probably going to be against it a touch, but then you have the gap behind, which says that they did something, those horses. So all in all, it's a bit of a pineapple race, but Glint of Silver and the Seven Seas can certainly run well in another race, and I doubt that they'll be well found from that one. Race 6, the 86 Securities Handicap over 1200. Snippy Fox was extremely dominant here. Again, a race that's just sort of just run just before that bend, so not as quite the wing damage, and they do go slow and run home fast, so it's not a surprise to see one of the on paces get home, but probably a surprise to see how dominant this horse was. Snippy Fox is sort of hard ridden to find the position right behind the leaders, which is probably the perfect spot here. Just a little bit of cover. Second horse, Exotic Ruby, finds a similar position. Irish Angel's last. It's probably the horse that has the most against it here, the slow pacing, having to come wide. Does a reasonably good job, obviously going extremely well, but does need things in its favour due to its racing pattern, and it does only have a short turn of speed. So the right horse, it's going well if it's placed in the right grade, right, it needs the right gait, the right things to go, but it's a bit of a push button horse, as you see, it sort of tracks up, has a short dash, and then peaks on its run. I like those horses because once they're going well and they find the right race, they're very predictable. So you can see how it looks like it's going to run into the finish, or at least run second, and sort of peaks on its run a bit there and grinds. I like horses like that because you know that that's what they're going to produce most starts. The winner obviously going extremely well, dominant late. Exotic Ruby, every possible, fell into second. It's going okay too. Incredulous Dream, a bit of a one-paced horse that I think is probably not up to the first three across the line there, and Blazing Mist was certainly a little bit better than it has been, but a little bit playing the straight too, even though it was outside the leader. And Bring the Ransom didn't have things to suit today, I think, there. So Snippy Fox obviously going extremely well, extremely competitive in anything similar to this coming up. Irish Angel going well, and I think placed to advantage. You know, if things fall its way a little bit, it's ready to win again too. I think they're the main two out of that race going forward. Race 7, the Razor Sharp. What a ride this. Glyn Schofield produced one of the better rides I've seen in quite a while to get this horse to the outside from an inside position, never gets held up for 1 inch and finishes over the top of them. It's the Razor Sharp, race 7. So they went out again reasonably slow here and came home quite quick, so good for this horse to come from a rearward position. Snapdancer just looked like it needed to run a little bit. It sort of has to work up to find its position, finds a nice spot, and is certainly strong enough in the straight, just run down by the one horse here, Special Reward, who was ridden a little bit quiet compared to probably what most people would have expected. I doubted they expected it back here, probably a pair further forward. Glyn's ride really was quite incredible from that position. So this is the winner. Glyn slices through outside this horse in the red here. It's a real impact, a real step, without really losing momentum. And as soon as he's able to find clean air here, he's allowed to go for his horse, and he's sort of within a length and a half of them without just dragging them up. So really good ride from Glyn. The horse was entitled to improve for a couple of reasons, but certainly not easy to find, and certainly not expected to win that soft the way it did. maybe they'll ride the horse with a little bit more patience going forward, and maybe they found the key to the horse. If so, certainly on that, hard to fluke it too much apart from a good ride and finding the right spot. It was certainly quite dominant over those horses there late. The Snap Dance is certainly one that can improve off that after a long break. Hard to race in this sort of grade fresh, and it beat the rest comfortably. Hard to see any of the others turning the tables under similar circumstances. 11-11 is probably the only one. If you watch the very start, 11-11 sort of jumps outside Surreal Step and is noticeably dragged back, same as Dress Circle to a certain, sorry, not Dress Circle, he was a good horse, Dream Circle to a certain extent, but this horse even ends up further back. So when we see that Surreal Step, even though it was 3 wide, sort of 6-7 lengths in front of this horse at one stage, after they jumped together, impossible missions for both horses, Dream Circle and 11-11. It's actually run quite a good race, and a horse that can certainly race far closer to the speed if it draws a gate. So that was obviously their plan Saturday. Put it out of play straight away. A forgive run for 11-11. Edison also probably up in distance can certainly improve that. That race just didn't suit it. Race 8, the Villiers Stakes. Really well backed horse. This Brutality does get the right run in transit to a certain degree, but quite dominant in the straight. Hard to knock anything behind it to say that they should have beaten it, that's for sure. Ellsberg really well ridden and thought that he did a good job, as he always does. Creedieris is just a punish, probably one of the runs of the day from back in the field, but too often does it do that. And Stockman's certainly ready for probably 2,000 metres and then further. It's absolutely flying. So the stable, Joe Price stable, going really well. Thought Grove Ferry had a big chance. Exo Boom, wide with cover, looks the winner at one stage. Probably doesn't run a mile for mine, so back to 1,400 for it. And Kerwin's Lane is good for Give, so we'll just watch the race. The winner's wide with cover, back here is it? Brutality sneaks up. On the back of them, this is Exo Boom. Creedieris is dead last. Stockman outside them all. Grove Ferry in the middle, and Ellsberg's up outside the leader here in the middle. So Ellsberg's certainly the best of the on paces. This is Brutality getting to the middle of the track here, Stockman and Creedieris. So Stockman sort of floats a bit one pace, Creedieris out sprints it, and Stockman comes back at it late. Interesting to see that, so I definitely want to be on this horse if they go up in distance, but this horse is just a punish due to its racing pattern. Exo Boom, sorry, I'll just go back and see. It looked like it was going to round Ellsberg up, and then quickly he loses his action and slows right down. He's definitely not run the distance there. And I like the way Ellsberg sort of fought, to be honest. I think he's going as well as he ever has, and this winner has done well to maintain that sprint, probably peaking on its run late too. Fun fact, is a weird one. It'll probably head up to the Gold Coast, and I wouldn't sack it on that run. And Kerwin's Lane was just in front of it. You see it sort of gets going again after it tried for a run there, balked, back in behind, loses all momentum. Forced to wait for the Cummings horse to get out of the way, goes back to the fence, try and build momentum again, which is difficult in the worst part of the track. And across the line, I thought it was just starting to pick up again, Kerwin's Lane. So it's not really bursting away from anything, but certainly much forgivable run from Kerwin's Lane. Should be ready now. I think it was only second up there too, so it's ready to go next start as well. The format of this race should be good over the next few weeks. Anything like the Gold Coast or something similar to this over the next month or so, that form should hold up. Race 8, a weird race, very similar to the one earlier in the day. They go out quicker here. Again, that the favourites had their chance to a certain degree and failed. And this horse is hard to make a case for anything, should have beaten it. Lightning Jack. Lakeen certainly starting to look like a horse that doesn't really savage the line. And I thought Mubarak's the ride was pretty average, considering the horse was second up off a break, and they went hard here, and there was no reason to go as early as it did. So Mubarak finds a nice position, Lightning Jack's behind it, so obviously they're going along well above average for the day here. They're working hard into the wind, so any of these on paces you can be forgiving of. Equation's probably the one that you most want to be forgiving of. It raced the most forward, apart from the leader, did the chasing and had to cut the wind, so forgiving of Equation. It's not one of my horses. Almahaha as well, but it's beaten a long way. The winner comes through the middle here in the tricolours racing colours. Lakeen through the middle as well. Zagalo here, and Mubarak. You just don't know why he would pop out 4 and 5 wide here when he could easily track Zagalo, knowing that these leaders are going to fold. Zagalo's going to come wide and take him into the race. He can track. Probably ends up in the same spot that the winner ends up, and instead of that he's had to use that run up a lot earlier. He's only got a shortish dash from line. I think he's probably got a 400 metre sprint. He's tried to turn it into a 700 or 800 metre sprint, which the horse doesn't have, and I think he's ready to go, so happy for him to have run 4th or 5th here. 4th. Lakeen just whacks away probably in the slightly superior part of the track, but again not a horse that I really want to find. Zagalo honest. And the winner, no knock, first run in Australia for the stable. Hard to see what level it'll get to, but obviously competitive in anything like this. No knock on its run there at all, even though it was probably a little bit pace assisted. It was very dominant over them. As I said, sort of Equation was probably the one that was pace assisted that the pace hurt that you can be forgiving of. The last was a really ordinary race, hard to be too harsh on the winner because it's so dominant, but just a weird race that really turned out well for it. Nothing too much in form, so the Fleetwood Mac was a new one to Australia. It didn't go too well. Tronius obviously not racing well at all. Holyfield's not going as well as it was either. A Dynamic Impact, the second favourite's sort of drawn awkwardly and ends up back and wide and fails. Blesk is back here as well and is a victim of its racing pattern. Does a decent enough job to run on into second, but that sort of horse that tends to get back and run on, as it's gone up in grades, finds it harder to get over the top of them. So I thought the other run in the race that was worth noticing is this horse out here, Nitride, that's pulling itself into the ground outside of Bless, so it's been dragged back. If it had drawn a gate, I think it would have run a race. It was 100 to 1 here, and is certainly eligible for much easier races. But anything up to 1400 metres, I don't want to be on an inch past 1400. Anything below sort of 12 to 1400 metres, I think this horse is going extremely well, Nitride. And back to the provincials country, or even another one of these races lightly weighted. I can see it running well. Bless coming here, so Brooks By gets the perfect run, comes around the leaders, certainly shows a bit of acceleration to put the race within on doubt, but just the right horse in the right race at the right time for mine. And even though I like the horse, this is no real feather in its cap putting these horses away. Bless whacks in second, Holyfield pretty much every chance running third, and Nitride above and beyond fighting at 4th. So not much to be learnt there, I don't think. A pretty average race to win the day. I don't want to be too confident in anything coming out of it, but Brooks By, certainly at least a pass mark, couldn't do much more than put them away, just not going overboard with the win due to the quality of the race. Going back over the races, nothing really stood out as a too exciting horse to follow. So I'd just be following the comments made during the race itself. There were no standouts. Quite a few that can measure up this time of year, and a couple, especially race 3, I think, horses that can sort of head up to the Gold Coast if they're eligible, or be handy in early stakes races for 3 and 4 year olds coming into the new year. But I think they were the highest quality races in that Villiers form. And probably the Razor Sharp form will certainly hold up in summer and sort of Gold Coast racing as well. Thanks guys, and good to be back again. I'll come back with something, I'm sure, in the next few days. Cheers guys.